first question is, would you rather have 20 toes per foot or one big toe for a foot, and why? And he explicitly said he needs to know and why, but I did say I feel like you can't really answer that question without the explanation. So,
what a question! I don't know. My first instinct is to go with one big toe, on each foot.
No, I think you have a big toe like for a foot.
For a foot, right? Okay,
I think
that changes it. Probably would go with the 20 toes.
There's no discussion of how they're arranged, so
yeah. If it was just a foot with one big toe on it, like in the place of 5 toes,
and
I'd go for that because just saved. I don't know, more efficient in when you comes time to trim your nails. I don't know, but in terms of I don't know if it's 20 toes, and I don't know for density. I don't know. It's evenly spread. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's really difficult.
I mean, there's unfortunately, this is the question. You got to pass this question to answer the rest. So I have no idea what my answer is to that question. I initially thought one like foot or toe for a foot might be good for like kicking and stuff. If you're in a right situation, and just throw a right foot over, like
punting. Yeah.
I don't know if you'd be a good or a terrible footballer. Probably terrible. I don't imagine your first touch would be very good.
There's got to be someone in the world who can answer this from experience.
Well, I said to the last guy about I said free merch for anyone because we talked about someone having 50 toes, and then he said no, it's not your merch to go out. I was like, I don't think you're going to run into anyone with 50 toes, so I think you're good.
You never know. I've seen some right weird programs. If there's anything I've learned from like Channel 4 documentaries, it's just like expect the unexpected for anything in life.
Is it Embarrassing Bodies? That's the one, isn't it?
That's another good one.
Yeah.
I'm really embarrassed about my body, but open enough to go on telly about it.
Yeah, I never understood that concept. Yeah. I don't know where you have to be mentally. It's like Naked Attraction. Because like you've got to be desperate enough to go on Naked Attraction. Sorry, anyone that's gone on Naked Attraction. I don't think my crossover audience is that great between Naked Attraction and my podcast where I talk to heavy metal people. But yeah, you've got to want to go naked on TV, but also be kind of stuck enough for a date.
Yeah, you've got to have some serious body confidence to go, you know what, I'm comfortable with people seeing this on telly.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean...
But probably you're too shy to talk to people. I don't know how it works.
It is a weird sort of... Yeah,
it's a very niche mindset, I think.
I think that is the word. I guess that's what makes for good television. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hopefully we can explore some niche mindsets that aren't quite in that niche. I don't know. It depends where it goes. I don't know. Exactly. The problem with these questions, right? This happened, and the last question for the last guest was also toe related, and he was like, "Well, I'm going to carry on the toe theme." I'm like, "Please don't," because now I don't know where. There's no feasible. I write down my little points of like, "Oh, I think this would be a cool thing to talk about," because relative to each guest, and then we start with toes, and I'm just like, well. Normally, I can make some neat little connection between a topic and the question, the first question.
See, now I'm curious who that was.
That was I wouldn't ever say until after you've answered the question because I don't want it to influence it. It was Dave Davidson from Revocation.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because I asked.
Dave, that's a great question, Dave.
Yeah, what did I ask him? It was something about toes. It was a toe-related question. I can't remember what it was now. But,
do you want me to carry on the toe?
Not at all.
Question.
No,
okay, or do you want me to nip it in the bud right now?
Well, you'll ask the question at the end of the podcast, so it's up to you. You can dob me in it, and leave me stranded on Toe Island with my questions because it does feel a little stranded. Because I'm like, well, how do I go to? I'm kind of looking through my little things I wrote for you. Like, how do I neatly kind of segue into? Well, I've got a segue, and you can observe how good or terrible this is. So,
okay.
So whereabouts did you sort of grow up?
I grew up in Derbyshire.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up from Derbyshire. I live in Kent at the moment. I've been living in Kent since like August 2020. So that was interesting, moving to a completely different part of the country during a pandemic.
Mm.
But I grew up in Derbyshire. Other than when I went to university in Guildford, I lived there my whole life until I moved to Kent a couple of years ago.
Yeah, because what I was going to say, because so I was brought up not far from Guildford. I was brought up sort of near Leatherhead.
I know Leatherhead. Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting place. Yeah, all sorts of things going on. Lots of people with odd numbers of toes, probably. But I was kind of my sort of. I had a similarly silly question. So I went to BIMM I went to the one in Birmingham that opened not so long ago.
Oh, cool.
And I know you went to ACM, right?
I did. Yeah.
My question is, who'd win in a fight? Everyone from ACM or everyone from BIMM?
Very good question.
Yeah.
Because I know quite a few people who were at both.
Oh.
And I can't decide whether they're equally strong or equally weak.
Or equally stupid.
Or equally stupid. So either way you see it, it's musician on musician, isn't it?
The pay-per-view is not going to be very high.
No, it's unless you're like John Petrucci or Zach Wilde. Most musicians I know aren't exactly beefy. Let's put it that way. So I don't know. I'm going to have to root for my home team, and that's ACM. I think ACM are going to do it.
Although I think because ACM, it depends which BIMM you pick. Because I think if you pick ACM is obviously a lot of like Surrey people, and I'm a Surrey person myself. Not the fighting standard, I don't think is massively high. Whereas if you pick maybe like BIMM London, they might be more geared up.
That's the thing. I think it depends if like the mean streets of Guildford. I don't think you don't need to be tough.
I've never walked through Guildford at night and thought, this is dodgy.
Yeah, I need to keep my street smarts about me.
No. I've been horrendously drunk in Guildford enough time.
But then again, I grew up in Derbyshire, and you don't need street smarts there either. I suppose it depends which part of Derbyshire, but I just didn't need street smarts.
Yeah.
To be good in a fight. Like I've never even occurred to me. I'd be awful if I actually had to get into a fight. But yeah.
No. I technically I have a black belt in Taekwondo. I did that.
Well, you'd be all right then. I'd be on your team.
Well, I might be crap though, because it's that like so. If you watch like Olympic Taekwondo, it's so like if you watch boxing or something, like that's close enough to what a street fight might look like, or MMA or whatever, you know. But if you watch Olympic Taekwondo, it's all like they're all padded up, and they like touch them they'll like tap them with the foot, and that's a point, and it's like that's not, you know. So maybe I've even got a bit of self-confidence that shouldn't be there, you know. That I wouldn't say I've ever been in a proper fight, so like.
Yeah, like that whole thing of like, why is this person not tapping out?
Yeah.
Where's the referee? You know.
Yeah. Right. Question 2.
Okay.
Who would be the best? What would be the best if you could pay for a fight to watch a fight between two musicians, dead or alive? Who would you pick?
Oh my word! I do not condone violence.
No, I mean like a sanctioned, safe fight.
Sanctioned, safe fight with a good point system.
Yep.
And completely fair.
Yeah, like not just some like street fight. I mean,
I don't know. Weirdly enough, going back to the two I mentioned earlier, like Zach Wilde and John Petrucci, just for guitar skills, like guitar skill versus guitar skill, or just like good old fashioned man on man. That'll be interesting to see.
Or you could just pick like a particularly nasty musician and against Zach Wilde.
That's the thing. Yeah, I think that's more what it would be. Like,
yeah,
because they both come across as really nice guys. I'd be rooting for both of them. But then,
yeah,
there's some people I've met in the industry where you'd think, yeah, I know it sounds horrible, but I'd like to see them go against someone bigger than them and see how they fare.
I don't condone violence, but there's some people I'd like to see lose a fight.
Yeah, I'm a genuinely like positive person, peaceful guy, but there's just certain people you meet where you just go, you know what, I don't think I'd shed a tear if you heard something bad happen to them.
I know the feeling, yeah. I think that's I
wouldn't wish it on them, just for the record, but, I don't think I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, exactly. I know plenty. There's one person that comes to mind immediately, someone I went to school with who was just the worst. And, like, I don't wish any like, ill towards him, But if it happens, kind of like, oh, wow, that's
yeah. You kind of think, yeah, they had it coming.
Yeah, so from some, there's a Peep. I don't know if you ever watch Peep Show. There's a you know when Jez. I don't know how well you know Peep Show. I know it a bit better than I maybe should. Which something happens to Jez, like he gets a kick in the nuts or something, and someone goes, "He didn't deserve that." It's like in some sort of way he sort of did.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people I've met like that.
Yeah, there's just some people I think deserve some karma. I'm not saying they deserve violence per se. They just need a bit of karma in their life.
Yeah, that's a very politician's answer to that question.
Yes, yeah, because it's easy to get in trouble with stuff like this, especially being in the music industry. You say the wrong thing and that's it. Everybody takes it as a headline.
Yeah. Well, something that I found that when I was sort of doing some reading up about you and stuff, you said that you had a lower BS tolerance nowadays. And I'm surprised you've bothered listening to any of my conversation, if that's the case. But because that obviously can come from a few different places. Like, I feel like mine is, I think it is something that just over the years, I think regardless of age, I think that's something that kind of happens as the years go on, it seems anyway. And I couldn't quite pin down where mine comes from. I think it's just because I think, it can come from a place of, like, for example, a positive place of, like, valuing yourself more, things like that. But equally, I feel like mine just comes from a place of sort of, like, I guess it does come from valuing myself more in the sense that not allocating my time to things that don't deserve it, basically.
Yeah.
But sort of, I'm not trying to, so what do you think of your own quote? But where does that come from? Does that still kind of hold true, do you think?
I think it's exactly what you said. It comes from a positive place. Like, for me, the most positive thing that obviously ever happened in my life is I became a dad. And it was almost like, before I became a dad, I don't know, when I think back on my life pre-parenthood, it's like, how much time did I waste? I know it sounds really weird, but having a child makes you very aware of how quickly time goes. Like, our son is like 2 at the end of this month. You're like, where have those 2 years gone? That's mad. You see him grow in real time, and you're like, it's kind of weird. And I don't know, before he came along, I think I realised how much I was, like, willing to put up with because I was told it was just the norm. And then, like you say, you start to value yourself and what really matters around you, and you go, hang on a minute, that's not the norm. Things can change, and the norm was actually kind of wasting my time a little bit and causing unnecessary drama and stuff like that, where you just go, no, I ain't got time for that stuff anymore. Life is busy enough and hectic enough as it is without adding more BS to it. So it's like, nah, if I see the BS coming, I kind of quickly go, you know what, like, let's nip that in the bud. That's got nothing to do with me. I don't want to get involved in this stuff. Unless it affects me and mine, I don't want to get involved in it. And that's kind of where it comes from, I think. I think it does come from a positive place, but also trying to keep negativity at bay. Whereas, I don't know, before my son came along, it was like, okay, a little bit of negativity, but I'm not going to get involved with it. But it just becomes gossip after a while. And I'm like, I just ain't got time for that anymore.
Yeah, there was a thing that I a thing that I always try and balance, that I've still yet to decide how where that balance is, and you can never put like a number on these things, but obviously there's a certain level of tolerating BS, because sometimes so I mean, trying to work your way through the music industry, it's like there's BS you have to tolerate at every level.
Yeah.
And you could kind of go to sort of take the moral high ground and go, well, I'm not going to tolerate any BS, but then you're not going to get anywhere, are you?
It's a weird balancing act, where it's like, I think, like, in the early days of being in the industry, I was like, okay, well, obviously it's just how it is. So there's a certain amount you have to put up with, like I say, and then like I said earlier, like, then you start to realise, no, it's not. Like, it's amazing how many people talk themselves up, but you kind of see straight through it. Yeah. And I think I don't know, something happened in life where I just went, instead of me just letting it slide, I'm just going to go, nah, that didn't happen, did it? Stop lying. Why? What, like this habitual liars. I just got to a point where it's like, stop lying. You know? Whereas before I would have been quite shy and sheepish and just gone, oh, okay, well, whatever. I'll just pretend they didn't say that. And I found myself over the years just going, liar. Which can get me in trouble, but at the same time I'm just like, why do people feel the need to do that? I just find it weird.
I think, yeah, I've noticed the need to sort of present yourself in a self-important manner seems to be disproportionately related to the level of success I've noticed. So some of the most successful people that I've spoken to or just engaged with in one way or another feel no need to tell me about any of their successes.
Yeah.
Whereas the people who are kind of on the way or a little bit more further along the way than maybe I am, often let me know how well they're doing. And I'm just kind of thinking like, I find that quite frustrating because I think it's a bit of a trap because when someone else, you know that feeling where if someone, the one that I've mentioned this to one or two people, the one that always gets me is when people mention endorsements. If they've got an endorsement with a company, because that's very much like, oh, we're in the big boys club now.
Yeah.
And I would always feel, I had quite a few times where I'd bump into artists and they would talk about, oh, my endorsement with, and I would feel the need to bring up the fact that I have a couple, just to be like, oh, me too, you know. And I've had to stop myself now because it's just like you almost feel the need to join that, like,
yeah,
club.
It's this weird one-upmanship that can happen, which almost like, I think it is this whole thing of, I don't know, those creative types do want some kind of validation, but if you're constantly searching that validation, it can become negative in the sense that people just go, oh, bloody hell, look at him, like just talking about himself all the time, constantly wanting to be thanked for stuff, which I will genuinely thank people if they deserve a thanks. But people going, look what I've done for you. And it's like, yeah, thanks. It's kind of your job. Thank you. I'll thank you for it. You don't thank anyone else. It works two ways, you know what I mean? I don't know, just this constant need for validation is it's strange, and I do understand it, but when it becomes toxic, then it's like, yeah, I'm just going to walk away from this. You know?
Yeah, it almost, the one that it weirdly makes me think of when I'm driving, and you know when someone kind of half politely does something, but it makes no sense to do. Like they'll pull over somewhere, or they'll completely ignore any of the rules of the road to try and be sort of nice. But like it just frustrates me because I'm like, just drive normally. Just, you know, I'm not going to thank you now for this because you've just made my life a bit more awkward. And I'm not like a road rager particularly, but you know, I don't know if you can resonate with that.
I resonate with that when people like let you out at junctions, but there's no one behind them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you okay,
yeah,
thanks, but I could have just pulled out after you. It's absolutely fine. I'm like, like they're flashing you, go, and they get the ump with you because you know, well, I was literally going to go after you, but you know, thanks for being polite, but you've probably wound yourself up now because I've missed you flashing me to get out.
It's probably like enforced politeness, you know. It's kind of it's like I don't thank people. I don't give them the typical British wave. After that, I just drive straight on.
Oh, I'm very much a waver. I'm overly polite and overly British in a lot of situations. Not just driving, but I say sorry when I don't need to say sorry.
Yeah, it's crippling. The British need to apologise for everything. I was saying this to who was I saying this to? It was someone from America or sort of Canada or America, I can't remember, but either way, talking about how it's just so ingrained in our culture to be like that. So yeah, I have noticed, I think, because I probably disproportionately, according to the whole world music industry, or sort of like English speaking music industry at least, I probably disproportionately talk to more UK people because obviously that's where I'm from, than when you think about the population of the US and that. but I have noticed, I think, a certain level of self-confidence, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a positive way, not in an arrogant way. I've noticed more intrinsic confidence, I think, in the in sort of the American artists that I've spoken to. And I don't know if it is. Maybe it's just my sort of confirmation bias a little bit, but I feel like that is the case. And some of the ones I've chatted to, it almost can be mistaken for sort of like a sickening level of self-belief, you know, almost like a sort of cheesy kind of movie thing. But it does feel genuine with a lot of the people I've chatted to, and yeah, it's a weird one to, like, I chatted to Nick Johnston not so long ago.
Oh yeah.
He I believe he's Canadian, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
But he had a lot. It seemed like he had a lot of intrinsic kind of value, you know, feeling of value in himself. I don't know what your experience has been of musicians from different kind of parts of the world, because obviously I'm assuming you've had a good chance to chat to a few.
Yeah, I'm very lucky that I've been able to befriend a lot of people around the world, and funnily enough, talk about these situations. I won't name names, just in case they don't want to be outed in any way. But like, weirdly enough, I've just recently finished reading a book about Imposter Syndrome, and people all over the world have this, but I find weirdly enough it's more UK-based musicians I talk to have it. Like you say, I don't know if it's an ingrained thing. There's certain American artists have so much confidence where it's like, right now you're just delusional. And there is this weird balance where I speak to a lot of people, American, UK, doesn't matter where it is, that I find imposter syndrome is incredibly common, where it's almost like they feel like, oh, I only got the job because I was lucky. And I had that for the longest time, and I still have it, but I kind of keep it in check a lot of times. When anybody pays you a compliment, you're just like, yeah, well, anyone could have done it. It's like, you know, whereas I've met a lot of people who are like, I'm the only person who could have done this, and you're there going, okay, all right, calm down. So there is a balance, but I think there's definitely a lot more UK-based musicians I talk to who go so far the other way, where it's like they've got all the reason to be confident, and for some reason it's not there. Even if they've got a proven track record of being genuinely great at what they do, they still almost chase. They need to get onto the next thing to prove they're not a fraud, if that makes sense. Whereas I've met a lot of people around the world who are so far the opposite of that, where it's like, no, you are a fraud, but you've managed to convince people that you're not. So it does work both ways, weirdly enough.
It definitely does, yeah. And again, like, it goes back to what I was saying about people talking about these endorsements and things. It's like, the irony is there's probably not a lot of self-confidence there, and actually sometimes obviously you've got to kind of show your achievements if you need to kind of, you know, if you're talking to someone that you might potentially be networking with, and there's that weird balance. It's like everyone I talk to on the podcast. I mean, in some ways I'm talking, in other ways I'm sort of networking, you know. I never like to think about it like that. But it's like, I feel like, you know, sometimes you've got to kind of show what you can do and what you're about, but there's a balance in, like, you've got to I guess just read the room, and like, I'm not asking for your CV when I'm chatting to you. And in the same way, if you were to come on here and just start like going on about all your achievements rather than actually having a conversation, I'd feel a bit like, okay, like,
it is odd in the same way that I don't know. It's one of those things that like bugs me when it's like you get comedians who go on talk shows, and it's almost like you're just going on to do a bit of your routine and not actually have a conversation with people. And I find that my favourite comedians are the ones who can have a conversation and they just happen to be naturally funny instead of shoehorning in the jokes from their latest routine. And that can be the same with creative types as well. And I get it. It's all the networking thing and all that. And I will openly hold my hand up, and I have been that person where it's like, oh, this could be my shot. I need to tell this person how good I am. And then I almost like didn't like what was coming out of my mouth. It's like, why am I kind of grabbing any sense of I am good. Treat me seriously. And then, weirdly enough, I've met loads of people in the industry who openly admit, yet they were the same when they were younger, and it's just how it is. Some people stay that way, and sometimes it pays off for them, and sometimes it really doesn't. It kind of puts people off them when it's like, yeah, you're telling me all these great things, but none of these great things actually add up to anything, like, because we just don't like who you are as a person now. Which is, it's kind of sad. Not to bring the whole thing down, but it's kind of sad when that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, the thing is, anyone that you might want to work with that you feel is maybe that step above where you're at, you always feel that sense of. I try and avoid it where I can when I'm talking to people on the podcast, where I've chatted to some people that kind of think, oh, I've listened to their music for a while, like this is, and I think I haven't had it so much recently, which I'm quite happy with, where I don't feel, hopefully, the need to kind of. I think the thing I try and just remember, and whenever I meet someone in person that is potentially someone I could work with, or like just build some sort of relationship with, I kind of just try and treat them as if. Almost the bigger they are, the more I just try and be like, hey, how you doing? Like, chill. Because I feel like that's just, A, it's what they want, and it is just how to have the best conversation with someone. Yeah. And B, it also is genuinely in your own interest, isn't it? Like, how do you balance that kind of like networking but not networking? When you meet someone that you think, I might be able to work with this person or build some sort of working relationship in some way or form, but I don't want to just go up and almost verbal diarrhea my CV at them kind of thing.
It is difficult because, like I say, I've been incredibly fortunate and I'm incredibly grateful to meet a lot of my heroes. And thankfully, that wasn't like I'm trying to get work kind of situation. It was more of I can actually have a chat with my heroes and then form some kind of relationship with them. And to be completely honest, I'm in that situation now where I am networking. Obviously, I am looking for other bands. I'm doing all this kind of stuff, but I'm fortunate that a lot of the stuff I am doing now was born out of relationships I formed with people where I wasn't actively trying to pursue working with them, if that makes sense. I got on with them. They got on with me. And it was like Rich is free. Let's ask him. Which came out of just a genuine conversation. It wasn't I'm desperate for work. Have you got anything going? Which, to be honest with you, can happen, where it's like I'm getting in touch with people, asking them to bear me in mind for stuff. Here's my CV if you need it. And some people are very appreciative. Most people are very appreciative, because I would never do it to people I didn't really know, unless somebody put me forward for it. It's kind of hard when it's unsolicited and you're just going, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at what I've done. It's very difficult, but sometimes you do have to do that. And that's not just in the music industry. I think that's just trying to find a job, full stop. Like it's weird. You do have to kind of cold call people. I feel very, very awkward doing that. I'm very British. I've gotten a bit better, but there is a balance between being genuine and you want to work with people and then being pushy.
Ultimately, that's exactly what I had to do to speak to you. It's just how when it's about what I've had to do to speak to everyone to this point, minus like maybe one or two. Well, I suppose the first few people I spoke to, I knew from like my sort of band interactions and sort of general just being nosy and sort of sticking my beak in where doesn't belong and making friends with people.
Exactly.
But so that was easy enough to chat to those first people, but then beyond that, it's like, right, I'm going to have to email a load of people now and get in contact with people that don't know who I am, which I find really tricky because, like you said, you do feel like you're just cold calling them, and it's like, it's difficult to say hello. And what I really love about the podcast as well is I get to have a genuine conversation with all of the people that I maybe one day will have some involvement with, even if it's just I'm in a band one day and I happen to see them on a tour, even if it's as little as just crossing paths again. But I think that's important, so I really enjoy being able to sort of like network, if you like, but I really don't, I don't think about it. It's just kind of happening, which I quite like. For example, if I were to drop you a message just randomly and just be like, hi, do you want to chat for an hour? You'd probably be like, I'm sure he's lovely, but like,
I find myself being incredibly aware of how I word things when I'm reaching out to people, because I've never worked in sales. I've got friends who work in sales, and they said the same. It's like, it's horrible cold calling people. But then you just kind of get used to it, and I suppose it is a confidence thing. Some people have absolutely no problem reaching out to people. I've gotten better at it over the years, but I'm still awkward. Like, I still think I'm awkward until the first couple of conversations happen, then I feel at ease. But some people I've got in touch with, I'm like, I do find myself going, yes, hi, you probably don't know me, but sorry about this. And I've just got to be, I write it out like that, and then I go, yeah, let's take out all the sorries. The people I know who are really good at this thing never apologise for it. Because if you start apologising for it, people are like, well, why are you apologising for it? I don't know. And then I start overthinking, why did I apologise for it? Oh, God. And I'm an overthinker as it is, so it's, try and not think about that too much anymore.
Yeah. So with because you talked about sort of the imposter syndrome thing, and that obviously, that completely ties in with the whole feeling, reaching out to people and trying to, if you don't feel like you deserve to be where you are, trying to then reach out to someone and make them believe that you deserve to be in some sort of working relationship with them, or just friends with them,
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing to do. Is that something that you mentioned that you kind of, that it's something that's impacted you? Is that something that, I think you said you feel like you've got better at this, I guess the sort of the networking side of things. Do you feel like you've improved at seeing your own kind of value as a musician?
Yeah, because it's weird, because especially now since leaving Cradle of Filth, it is like I'm kind of starting again. Obviously, a lot of people know me from Cradle of Filth, but I'm getting contacted and I'm getting in contact with people who don't even know Cradle of Filth are a band. They know them, if they know them at all, they know them from the IT crowd and thought it was a made-up band, or they've literally have no interest in that genre, have never heard of them before, but they kind of still want to work with me. And it's that again, it comes back to that validation thing where it's like, okay, well, maybe I do know what I'm talking about. And it kind of, I don't know, it gives you that extra bit of confidence. But my imposter syndrome will still come back to bite me in the arse when it comes to stuff like that. I'll get a job or I'll work with somebody, I'm like, oh, they must have been desperate. Or even when I joined Cradle, I've probably said this a lot on interviews, but about a week into me getting to the job in Cradle, I was that close to emailing them and saying, sorry, you've got the wrong guy.
Wow.
I was incredibly close to never really being in that band, because thankfully someone close to me at the time just sat me down and went, I'll just get on with it. I kind of needed that, and that was like the first, well, probably not, that probably wasn't even the first bit of imposter syndrome, but that was probably when I was first aware of it. It's like, hang on a minute, I nearly turned down this really good opportunity because I didn't think I was good enough. But they wouldn't have asked me to go on tour if they didn't think I was good enough. So it's like this weird thing, you're constantly battling between these two things where it's like, now am I being cocky and overly confident because I'm like, yeah, I'm the best guy for this job, and then actually no, they're only asking me because they're absolutely desperate. It's difficult. I'm constantly struggling between those two things, and then I find myself like, oh, I need to like tone it down a bit. I'm maybe being a bit too confident, whereas I'm probably not at all. I'm probably not being confident enough. But on my kind of scale, my imposter syndrome scale, if you kind of big yourself up and go, you know what, no, I am good at this, that comes across as cocky. Whereas going back to what you were saying before, no, it's actually self-confidence. There is putting value in what you do, like you're saying about what Nick Johnson says. Is like, no, it's putting value in what you do and knowing you're good at something. You have something you can bring to the world. And then there's being cocky and arrogant. And I find that a very difficult thing. Maybe I am being overly British about the whole thing, you know what I mean? Where I think, oh, if I show signs of confidence, does that mean people think I'm an arse? And it's constantly battling that, to be honest with you, constantly.
Yeah, I mean, my sort of more recent experience of that is that I've started I'm kind of glad the podcast is growing nicely, and I started working with some like companies and stuff, not like paid work, but I mean just like press, going through press agencies and record labels and stuff, to get to, to chat to certain artists, and it's some quite big, I promise this isn't me trying to toot my own horn, it's just some quite big record labels. Obviously I'm very much small fish in that equation, but and some of the artists on there, I'm like, so can I just send you an email and chat to that one, because that'd be cool. But in my head I'm like, I can't do that because I'm me. I'm not like some big, if I was, I imagine like the Downbeat is probably the biggest metal kind of podcast, I guess.
Possibly. That's one of the first ones that spring to mind when I think of stuff like that.
I would guess, if you're going to be specific, like metal kind of rock genre.
Yeah, there's a lot of generic music stuff, or even podcasts about certain bands. I know, like there's certain bands or fans of a certain band have their own thing. But in terms of like metal as a whole, then that one springs to mind. Yeah,
because obviously, if I were in his position, I don't know how he feels about it. I would probably feel a bit more confident reaching out to these people, but. So it's a bit of a weird one. That's been my most recent experience of it, because I've never. This is a weird thing. I always like sharing this because I feel like it's an interesting one where I feel like I have a different experience of it to other musicians. Where the imposter syndrome thing, I almost feel what you're talking about, the overly confident guy. I'm kind of, although I wouldn't say I'm arrogant. I hopefully not. I don't know. Maybe judge for yourself. But I think. Because whenever I have this tendency to think that the things I'm turning out are really good, and that's obviously just my opinion of my own stuff, and it's great to have confidence in your own stuff, but then the problem is, if it doesn't get the success that you feel it deserves, it can be quite difficult, because, you're thinking, I've got all this great stuff, but it's not, it's not where I want it to be.
It's funny you mentioned that. I can think of so many people, out of all the people I've ever met in the industry, which I'm incredibly grateful for. I got to meet them at all. Some of them have become friends. It sounds horrible, but some of the most talented people I've ever met have never done anything in the music industry because their imposter syndrome is so bad. And I have actually heard what they've recorded. I've heard or seen films they've made or music videos they've made, and you're there going, and they never got released. Paintings they've made, drawings they've made, sculptures they've made. And you're there going, why have you kept this hidden? And they're like, oh, it's not perfect yet. To the point where it's like, nobody knows how good you are because you're kind of afraid to go out into the world and do it. And I think with these little things that have happened in my life where I've been incredibly lucky to get these opportunities where you go, my imposter syndrome, not that it ever goes away, but it kind of gets knocked back a little bit, where it's like, oh, okay, well, they wouldn't have employed me if they didn't think I was good enough for it, even though the imposter syndrome is doing that. Some people I can think of, like, they never do anything with it because they are so afraid of showing what they've done. And like you were saying, like, you've got to be proud of what you do, and unfortunately the imposter syndrome is so bad that they're not proud of anything they do. It's like, you do know this is incredible, and it doesn't matter how much they hear from people, this is incredible. They just go, oh, you're just saying that because you're my mate. It's like, no, I'm seriously not. The world needs to hear these songs, the world needs to see your movies, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's a difficult balancing act, because some people have too much imposter syndrome where it holds them back, and some people, as odd as it sounds, probably harsh as it sounds, don't have enough.
Yeah,
where they think everything they do is incredible, where it's like bit of quality control. So it is a balancing act, and I don't mean to sound like a dick when I say that, but I think some people need that kind of weird scale aligned a little bit.
Yeah, it's what I like about podcasting is I put 2 out a week, so perfectionism. Like, if I do a podcast, if I record one, I think that wasn't that great. Like, it was, I've had some where I kind of finish a call and I think like, it was okay, but like I don't know if that will be like the most popular thing ever, or or I think, oh, that conversation maybe wasn't as exciting as the last one or something, and a big part of that is down to me as well, But the good thing is I can put that out, and I can, there's so many positives to take from each conversation. So I can put it out, and then the next one will go out in a few days. And whereas with music, you like generally you put out, especially if you're like a pro band, you put an EP or an album out, and then like that's your thing for quite a long time. So obviously, if you're a perfectionist, like I feel like I fall into the trap a little bit with the songwriting side of things, where my creativity has been hindered by, I wrote some songs that I was really proud of, and now I'm trying to write stuff again, and I'm just like, I don't know, is it as good as that now? I don't know.
It's weird, because that's an ongoing thing for me as well, but that's gotten easier, and I've spoken to a lot of other musicians about this, where it almost gets easier the more you write, because you just go, well, I'm not going to ace it on this. If I don't ace it on this one, I'm going to write another one anyway. I think, weirdly enough, if you don't have enough ideas, then you kind of delay yourself putting things out, because you're like, no, this one idea this one song I have has to be perfect. Whereas the more you do it, it almost kind of strips away that perfectionism. I think it might be different for other people, but I used to be more of a perfectionist than I am, and now it's almost like I've got multiple songs in the background that I'm like, I'm proud of all of these, but all these songs can go in any direction I want them to go in. Is this good enough for how I'm feeling in the moment? If so, yes, put it out. Otherwise, I'll sit on an album for years and it never gets released.
Yeah. It's a tricky. I still don't know where I'm at with the balance of that. I think there's so many, and there's so much kind of seemingly perfect content out online all the time that it is tricky to, you know.
I like that word, seemingly perfect. I've got a lot of YouTuber friends of mine who are like, they genuinely have said they've never been 100% happy with their content, and everybody will be like, yeah, but you've got like how many subscribers? And you wouldn't know it as being not perfect if you watched it. And people have gone, no, I'm sticking to my own so deadlines are actually a really good thing for me, because I go, no matter how good it is on this deadline, I'm getting it out. I'll write a song, send it to a band I'm working with, and just go, what do you think? This is as good as I can get it at this point in time. What do you think? If it's crap, let me know. I'll start working on another one. And it almost kind of makes it easier, because then you come across these happy accidents where you just go, well, it's just a song, isn't it? And then ironically, you end up with better songs, in my personal opinion, when you kind of let go of that mentality.
Yeah,
instead of overthinking every chord progression, you're like, there's a better chord to find. It's like, no, this was the best one at this point in time, so I'm going to stick with it.
I like the whole kind of time, like not just the deadlines, although you're right about that. I think a song being a moment in time, like it's not, you know, because in theory, every song I've ever written, there are certain things where like I play something and then live I do it a bit different because I kind of found a way I just preferred a bit. But would I go back and re-record it? Obviously not. It's just that's what I did at that moment in time. So it's a weird one to, I think for me it's because songs feel so set in stone, you know, and they don't, I mean, you could put out one every week, but I don't know whether that might be a bit overkill, you know. It depends how productive you are and how much time you've got, but I don't know. It feels strange. I feel like I kind of don't know where I'm at, because the reason I say this context is we're both in sort of similar-ish situations, because I recently left my band that I've been in for a few years about 3 months ago. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you is what kind of that change in lifestyle, you know, how has that impacted you, and did it feel like kind of a big drop off from being busy with a band to suddenly like, oh, now I'm not, or did you feel like you adjusted well, or are adjusting well? I guess it's still a process, isn't it?
It's definitely still a process, and obviously I've got to be careful what I say, because, you know, powers that be and all that. But it's just, it's still a process. It's definitely been easy. It was one of those things where I just felt like I had to go. Not that I'm going to talk about the actual ins and outs too much, but I just felt like I was at a time in my life where I was like, I kind of have to go now. I'm grateful. I've done my time, but in some ways it was incredibly difficult, and then some ways it was really easy, because I've always done other stuff between tours with that band and records with that band, I've always had to do other stuff, and I'm just keeping the other stuff going, and I'm finding new projects. So in a weird way, even though Cradle was most likely the biggest thing I'll ever do, it was another project that I did alongside many other projects, and now those other projects are still going, and whether it's paid work or just completely for fun, I'm still getting the calls in the same way that I was doing before I joined Cradle. And so in some that way it was kind of easier, because it's like, well, I'm still working, I'm still doing stuff, but in the background there's a lot of mental stuff where you're going, was that a good decision? Should I have just held out a little bit longer? The kind of interpersonal stuff where it's difficult, like a breakup. You know, like, how often do you think about your ex when you've recently broken up with them? You know, it's like, and then over time it fades out a little bit. So I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to say I'm completely there, but I'm happy because there's stuff to fill my time, and there will come a point a year from now or whatever it is, a week from now, who knows, where I'm just like, it was just something that I did, but I'll always be grateful that I got to do it. Don't get me wrong, and I'd like to think there's more stuff I'm going to do, but at the same time, life right now is incredibly exciting because there's lots of things going off at the same time, and it's just, I'm in this weird limbo where I'm kind of setting everything else that is going to be my future. So it's kind of strange, but it's great. But at the same time, there are times where you do think, yeah, but I do miss it. So it is difficult. I mean, that weird limbo right now.
I feel the same. I mean, the scale of sort of gigs and stuff I was playing doesn't really compare, but like, yeah.
Not to cut you off, but I will tell you a little story about that. Weirdly enough, when people say that to me, I've got a brilliant story that I'll tell you. So
I'll remind you after.
Yeah. I'll carry on with your thought, and then I'll jump in on that afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested. But yeah, it's a weird one where I do find myself looking back, and I think I made the choice. And again, I'm not going to ask you to give your input as just for the sake of not saying anything you don't want to say. But for me, I think I look back on it sometimes a bit sweeter than, or a bit more fondly than how it actually was. It wasn't a very well formed sentence, but
I know what you mean.
Because I obviously the reasons I left were more sort of personal reasons than any sort of musical stuff. And I was really, really proud of the music. Like, I was the main songwriter, kind of wrote a lot of it before I'd met any of the guys, so I was really proud of the music. So it was really difficult to leave a band where I essentially wrote a great deal of it. And don't get me wrong, the guys in the band did their thing, and very much the sound was very much like a band sound. It was kind of, I feel like it was, a lot of it was my sound, but it was delivered through other people who made it their own in some way, you know. And it was very difficult leaving that. And I kind of, the thing I've had to kind of, because there was some tangible interest in the band from some decent sort of figures, and I think I've kind of got to get to grips with the fact that if they get massively successful with this new guitar player they've now got, I'm going to have to, it's going to be a real experiment in controlling your ego, because but yeah, I just have to look back on it and think, I left that band because I didn't want to be in the band. It sounds obvious, but you know, as in personally, it wasn't working for me. Obviously, if they go and become massively successful, I've just got to remind myself that, like, great, but there are loads of successful bands out there that I would hate to be in, you know.
So it's just the thing, you never know what's going on behind the scenes of some of these bands. Everything seems perfect, and then some stuff's not great, and then you get some bands that it is actually completely great behind the scenes, and it's like you're being married to like 5 other people or something, and they've all got to get along with each other as well.
Everyone,
you know what I mean? That's hard work. You got to balance all that kind of stuff, and like bands, like any band that can go for like 40, 50, 60 years, like Stones or whatever, you're like, how have you managed to keep this going? And it's difficult. It's difficult.
What was your thought
My thought, it was when you mentioned like being at different levels and all this kind of stuff. And I've probably said this on a million interviews, but it's still a great story. This is one of the almost a thing that kind of helped with my imposter syndrome as well. When I saw it happen in front of me, I was like, this could be the greatest moment in terms of shifting my mindset. I remember being on tour with Cradle, doing the summer festivals in 2015. So I'd been in the band something like 18 months or something like this. And I was very much struggling with the whole, it's only a matter of time before people cotton on that I'm not very good and just all this kind of stuff. I'll enjoy it while it lasts, which I did. And but I remember watching, Cradle had already played, and I'm on the main stage of Grass Pop Festival in Belgium watching Korn side of stage, one of my favourite bands, when the guys from Slipknot come up next to me, one of my favourite bands, and I'm there going, this is weird. And I just got to the point where I was like, I've got to say something. And I just turned around, and I can't remember who it was I spoke to first, and then thankfully that person introduced me to the rest of the guys. I was like, oh my God, I'm watching Korn, one of my favourite bands, with one of my favourite bands. This is mental. And then this moment happened, and I'll never forget it. Rob Halford from Judas Priest walks past, and he's watching Korn, and the guys from Slipknot are like, that's Rob Halford. And Corey's a massive Judas Priest fan, and everyone's going, Corey, go talk to Rob. And Corey's like, I can't. And it was one of those weird, and then Rob left, and Corey was like, that should have said something. This is Corey, who has no problem keeping his mouth shut. You know what I mean? Like, I absolutely love the guy, but he's never lost for words, is he? Yeah. In that moment, he was. And it was one of those moments where I was like, we're all just fans. At the end of the day, we're all just fans playing. We're all playing at different levels, but that love of what we do is there no matter what level you're at. And that kind of made me realise, oh, cool, we are all just fans, and some people are just more lucky to do it at bigger levels than others, but it doesn't change who you are as a person.
It's a good way to look at it. I have seen how, I mean, I suppose the closest story I have to that, which is a very similar but different, is probably one of the cooler gigs that I played with my band was we did this acoustic show with Silosis, Tesseract, and Malevolence.
Oh, was that like one of the Knotfest, like Pulse for Maggots things?
Yeah. And obviously none of those bands are really like acoustic bands, particularly not Silosis or Malevolence, really. And I remember sitting in, and they were all really nervous, like all of them. And if you listen to someone like Dan singing, if you listen to any of them sing, to be fair, and play the guitar, they're all so talented. And I think they were more nervous. Like, I get kind of nervous. I get more nervous playing clean than I do heavy, because heavy, you can just kind of chug, and if you make a mistake, it's not as...
Yeah, clean, you're kind of a bit more exposed.
Yeah,
so I totally get it.
It was quite humbling that they were all... I was going to say in particular one of them, but I was actually thinking, no, they were all quite nervous. And it was maybe about 100 people in the room. It wasn't a big gig. Like, it was like one of those sort of quite intimate ones. But yeah, and I just remember kind of thinking, like, these guys are more nervous than I am, which is weird. And then it does put you at a weird kind of... it was interesting. And that was another one where I was a bit starstruck at that moment, because they're all bands that I listen to.
Yeah, same here.
And particularly our bass player, he absolutely... Malevolence, like, his favourite band. Like, before they blew up recently, he was always going on about them. But, like, I was like, who are these guys? I don't know who these guys are.
Yeah.
Suddenly they blow up, and like, you might have been on something there. But it was a weird one. I can't, like I was saying, you don't... I was a bit starstruck, but at the same time, like, Josh from Malevolence absolutely loves Silosis. So he's fanboying over the guy he's on a bill with as well. So there's like these three, it's almost like there's this little ladder of fan,
Yeah, it's pretty much every festival I've been a part of. Obviously, there's bands at different levels, all fanboying, fangirling over each other. Basically, it was one of those like really humbling moments where it's like, this imposter syndrome thing that's been a running theme throughout this interview. It seems it's everyone kind of gets it in a weird way, and sometimes it pushes them forward, and some people it holds them back. And I find a lot of people on the festivals, it's pushed them forward. And when they get to meet their heroes and realise their heroes have heroes, and those heroes have heroes, and it just keeps going and going and going. It's like, I think back to, like, I'm a huge Metallica fan, and Metallica supported the Stones. That was the last time Metallica were a support band, was 2006, I think it was. Oh. And they hadn't been a support band for 20 years prior to that, when they supported Ozzy. And then all of a sudden the Stones asked them if you want to, like, open our 2 nights at Candlestick Park, I think it was, in San Francisco. And Metallica were like, yeah. Like, why would you not? You're like our idols, kind of thing. And it's like, yeah... it doesn't matter how big you get. If I think it's keeping that humble kind of fanboy inside of yourself kind of really, really helps.
Yeah, I was I spoke to Jamie Slays. He was talking about James Hetfield getting all emotional over Elton John.
Yeah,
talking about nothing.
That was cool. That was
such a cool moment, and I just think, yeah, let's just. I see a lot of humanity in James Hetfield, and he's beyond whether he's kind of on par with like the guys in Black Sabbath, or maybe in terms of like level of what he's done for metal and like who he is. I personally would put him up there with them, because although they maybe started it, well, they did start it. I think what he and Metallica did for metal equals that. I just think it's in a different way, for me anyway.
This is the thing, Metallica for me were just the perfect gateway band. Like, I was into bands like Queen and the Beatles, and so I'd have like riff-based music and stuff, but then all of a sudden I heard Metallica and I was like, oh my god, this whole other world of music exists, and now I definitely need to be able to play guitar. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's and Metallica, I don't think get enough... Well, they do get credit, don't get me wrong, but in terms of my personal development in this life, I kind of owe to Metallica, because it's like, I picked up a guitar because of Metallica, so therefore I got in bands. I met pretty much 99% of people I know I've met through being in bands. I met my girlfriend through being in bands. So our son was born from me technically wanting to play guitar. You know what I mean? It's like, if you go that far back, it's proper like the butterfly effect kind of thing that really freaks me out. But at the same time, it's like, you owe these musicians more than they probably realise, if you really think about it. The fact we're talking now is probably because of Metallica. Really.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's like...
It does freak me out if I think too much about it, and it's just the way life goes. But I own Metallica quite a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was all down to Limp Bizkit, to be honest. But here we are. I do love Limp Bizkit. That's not me. I
loved Limp Bizkit. I absolutely loved them. Like they just came out at the perfect time when I was just starting to get pretty good on guitar. Like, just I've got the basics down, and then like a band like Limp Bizkit comes onto the forefront of metal, and you're just like, well, these riffs aren't ridiculously complicated to play, but they're a lot of fun. And I'm technically getting better. It's almost like they just picked me up and went, there you go, have that for a bit. We'll drop you off at another band or another style of music later on. And Limp Bizkit don't get enough credit, I don't think.
They went through that period it was a long time until recently where everyone was just shitting on them. And I don't want to be that guy, but it's like, I always was just like, they're just good.
They were successful. A lot of people, it's the same as Metallica, like the Beatles. And I'm a massive Beatles nerd, and arguably the biggest band that ever existed. There are people who almost make a point of hating them. And there's people who are the other way, where it's like they make a point of going, no, I pretty much don't listen to anything else. There's no point, because the Beatles are the greatest band of all time. And it's like, I don't know. If you reach more people, you're going to find more people who don't like you, but you're also going to find more people who do like you. So I'm a big Michael Jackson fan as well. Weirdly enough, I was watching a documentary on Michael Jackson last night, and it was like he got massively successful, but obviously more people start hating on him just because more people are aware who he is. It's simple maths. You can't please everybody, you know.
Well, yeah, if 1 in 100 people absolutely hate you, you have 100,000 fans. That's like 10 people that don't like you, isn't it?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
the more people you reach, the more likely you're going to be successful.
Well, it's
but
like
you're just going to find more people who don't like you as you go along.
Yeah, well, I've heard you mention that you're a big sort of Alter Bridge fan. They're my absolute like heroes. But obviously Creed get that kind of same stick, and I just don't. I'm just like, they're great songs. Like, you know,
this is the thing. It's almost like just people make a point of hating successful bands. I don't know why. I don't know if it's jealousy or if it's just trendy. I don't know what it is, but then the number of times I've shown people Nickelback songs without telling them it's Nickelback, it's hilarious what happens. Put on the heaviest Nickelback songs and people are like, this is great. Chad Kroeger starts singing and people are like, hang on, I don't like it anymore. You're like, oh, really? Are you going to be that guy? I thought you said you liked it until you realised it was Nickelback and like, oh, I can't like it now.
Yeah, I never quite got the Nickelback hate either. There are very few bands that get the hate. I think there are very few bands out there that get the exact right level of hate. You know?
Yeah. Some bands who get the hate and it actually adds to their success.
Yeah. I'd never want to be.
Weird.
That's not for me. I couldn't be that kind of, where you feel like some people lean into it a bit, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people use it as a really good marketing ploy. There's a band that springs to mind right now that are really milking that. Because they've got a brand new album out, and I love that band, but all the interviews I've seen are like just slagging other people off. Where it's like, yeah, it's press, and I get it, you've got an album to release, but surely there's better ways to do it.
I want to know who you're thinking of. I've got someone in mind, but I don't think it's the same one as you.
It is what it is. But,
yeah. I think there's something. So when in terms of your like 2000s era, like metal and hard rock and stuff, I think it's so underappreciated in terms of songwriting. Because like weirdly, the thing that made me think about that was the producer that we worked with, Tom Gittins. He is massively. He's got such a great songwriter's brain. He doesn't know his theory too well, but like he knows exactly what note to put in that chord to make that chord better. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's that. So in other words, it's way more important than knowing what to call.
Oh, definitely.
But he, like his entire library of reference songs is basically like 90s and early noughties metal, like new metal, which traditionally you wouldn't probably associate with like songwriting prowess. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just you don't. Yeah, when you think of that, you kind of think maybe all these like, I don't know, Dream Theater or all these symphonic metal kind of ideas. And but he would just he would reference like a 20-second background guitar in the verse of that one Korn song or whatever, and it would be the perfect idea to fit into our song in some way. And he pointed out there's this I'll have to show you it at some point. There's these heavy metal lullabies where they take like heavy metal songs and put them in lullaby form for like dads who. So
I've heard about this. Yeah.
But what's really great, I don't actually think it's copyrighted, so I might let me have a look because I might even be able to play you a bit because I don't think it's copyrighted. Let's have a quick look because I want to. Sorry about the distraction, but I think you'd appreciate this actually. And this is the first. I don't normally do this.
Okay.
Hang on. Let's have a quick look. I don't know if it's sort of Oh, it is copyrighted. Oh wait, hang on. Oh, I don't know if that's the same. Oh no, that's on the Korn website. I'm just going to play you a clip, and I'm sure nothing will happen. But this is this is a whole Korn album, lullaby versions. But if you listen, this is Freak on a Leash. Hang on, you should hear it. It's really like what it points out is that like when I'll play you the chorus bit, how well constructed all the chords are and stuff when you hear them together. Like, where is it? Yeah. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that like it points out how good like noughties metal things like Freak on a Leash. You don't think chord progressions and theory. But it's so melodically and harmonically interesting.
I think that stuff is just embedded in my memory because of the age I was when I was like first starting to play guitar, and I've had this conversation with again many musicians, some of which I've toured with, some of which like again it's trendy to hate on it, or they just see it completely differently. They're like, absolutely not, hate it. And then there's other musicians where they're like, thank God someone else has mentioned about just how there's a reason they became successful. The songs were good. But again, it was popular to hate on them because they became successful. So it's a chicken and the egg situation. Did you hate them because they became successful? And it just doesn't happen to fit in the box of especially in metal. You know how toxic metal can be. If it doesn't fit in your idea of what metal is, therefore it's a bad song. And it's like, well, it's not really how that works. You know. Yeah, this band's awful because they're playing to sold out stadiums and they've sold loads of records. But it's not the style of metal I like. Therefore, they're bad because I'm the oracle of metal. I just find that hilarious, absolutely hilarious. That kind of mentality. It's like, you know.
Yeah, there was one thing that always, there's a bit of gatekeeper with the guys in my old band. They wouldn't be annoyed at me saying this, but one of them would always insist that like the inhale screams.
Oh yeah.
I think if they sound good, they are good, but they're like, no, you've got to do it properly. I'm like, what? Who cares? It's like, I don't care how they make the noise. Like, and they're like, no, but it's like, I think they're almost treating it like it's an art form, and I'm just like, no, bollocks. Yeah. If you I think one of the coolest ones is in Cowboys from Hell. After the solo, the Phil Anselmo does this big scream when you get the boom, and he's playing the riff, and then he does a big scream for it. The verse, I think, comes in again, and it's just like, that's so awesome. But it's like an inhale, and they're like, oh, don't like that. Why?
Exactly. Oh, that can't be good because it's different. Well, I've got news for you, musicians and gatekeepers. It's like some of your favourite artists did stuff by accident, and it just. And I've also got news from some of it's also faked, but you can't tell them that,
Yeah. Well, that's what we could do. Out someone. There we go.
I'm not going to out people. Just for legal reasons. This has nothing to do with my old band. That was it. Honestly, it's not. But there are a lot of bands I've seen where you go, yeah, that's fake. And they become massive bands. People are like, no, this is real metal. I've got news for you. That band that you think is the greatest thing ever, they're not doing it live, mate. I'm sorry. So you just kind of go, I'll pretend I didn't say anything because I'm just going to absolutely shatter their reality if I tell them. But they're like, no, this is the greatest band ever. This successful band sucks. At least that successful band's doing it live,
Yeah. I think as long as you're honest about it, I think it's fine.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. And metal's getting worse for people miming, and it bugs me. I did. Probably it really gets me going when people mime. I don't get it. Why would you do it?
Yeah, when people talked about these sped up videos, these guitar videos, and I'd not really seen many. I'd seen very very sort of they record it and then they go and play over it kind of thing. But and I don't really have a problem with that, to be honest. But I saw recently the first one where I was like, that is sped up. Like, there's no way it's not. And he's not. What annoyed me, I'm not going to out the guy because I might be wrong. I don't know, but I'm pretty certain it's sped up. I sent it to a friend like, this isn't normal, is it? And he was like, no, that's sped up, because you can see in the way he plays it. The worst thing is the guy is like a guitar teacher. I'm like, that's really not very good. I nearly sent him a message just to say, like, I'm not accusing you, but is that, because I don't think that's very healthy. But I just didn't want to be all Karen about it. Like,
yeah, it's a weird thing because I've got a YouTuber friend of mine. I'm not going to mention him, but he was on about it. How it kind of there's this. I think it's a social media full stop thing with, especially in the guitar community, where it's like you do know, or like that certain player. There seems to be this thing where it's like it is faked. Like, you've bent and you put vibrato on the bend, but you can't hear the vibrato. It's like, hang on a minute. One, you've just faked it. Don't get me wrong, I can understand it from a practical point of view. You do have to play it back. But when you listen back to it and you're like, you've auto-tuned the bends.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And that seems to be very common right now. It's like, well, just learn to bend in tune. And I just find it really weird. It's almost like you've gone in and auto-tuned every note, and then people are going, this guy's the greatest guitar player around at the moment, and you're there going, cool, I'm not going to crap on anyone else's success, but you people who know. And as a guitar teacher myself, which weirdly enough I've got a lesson in about 5 minutes or so unfortunately we'll have to wrap it up. But as a guitar teacher myself, I've got loads of students who are like, this guy's the greatest, and you're there going, I can't tell them that he's faked it. I can't do it. I can't, because it will shatter their reality. They're going, I'm really struggling with this bit, and I'm there thinking, yeah, don't worry, he didn't play it either. And it makes me sound like an arse when I say that, and I don't want to be, but at the same time you're going, you are giving yourself unrealistic expectations of what you're going to do with your music. But in a weird way, sometimes it helps.
Yeah.
The reason I mention that, because when I was lecturing at a couple of universities, it was amazing what I was starting to see happen with some of the students. Now, this could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. The drummers were frighteningly in time, because they were used to hearing drummers that they thought were playing live, and they weren't. And it's all gridded and chopped up, and so their sense of timing is frighteningly good. Same for singers. Their pitch was frighteningly good, because they were used to hearing singers with auto-tune on.
Scary.
So they'd listen to a singer like Nina Simone, and they'd be like, why are they so out of tune? It's like, yeah, but can you hear the emotion? I don't care if it's in tune or not. The emotion's there, and it sounds brilliant. Why are you overthinking how in tune it is? Because they're so used to hearing auto-tuned vocalists that they almost like think that's the base level. So in a weird way, some people are like almost being conned into what talent is. And then in some ways it's actually helped, because they're trying to emulate something that is technically perfect to the point where they're frighteningly in tune and in time.
Well, that's
in a weird way, that can sound really odd when you hear it done in person.
Yeah.
It's like, that sounds fake, but you are doing it in front of me. It's kind of weird.
I'm sure that's what she said there somewhere. Or
something. Oh, yeah.
Well, on that kind of positive note, I need you to quickly, so that I don't hold your lesson back, a question for the next guest to start their conversation, and an artist that you'd like to promote to the world who maybe deserves some love.
Okay, do we keep the toe theme going?
I mean, we've only done 2, so it's up to you. I mean,
I might nip it in the bud, because I'm struggling to think of something off of. What?
Great question.
No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. A question. I might keep it linked to what we've been talking about, like. What is your definition of success?
Nice, that's a good one. Yeah. Back on track with
it's different for everybody, and I'm always curious what people think success is. So yeah, what is success to you, or what is your idea of success? What is it? How do you know you've become successful in your own mind?
It's when you don't have to talk about toes. You can move on from the toe side of conversation.
Unless you're a toe specialist, in which case you're very successful.
That is true. I have no intention of doing that whatsoever. So I'll leave the toe thing behind. Maybe it'll come back to haunt me at some point. Now I've said that, if I get massively popular on this, someone's going to come back, watch this, see me say that, and go, oh, let's get a toe question in again.
Yeah, exactly.
And then also, if you can plug an artist to the world, that would be great as well.
Oh, so many I can think of.
Just one.
There's a band that I think are going to do some really, really cool things from back home called These Wicked Rivers. I think they're going to do some really cool stuff, like bluesy rock, but they've got like a whole new spin on it, and they're starting to make some waves at the moment. And I've been following them for a long time, good mates of mine, but they are deservedly starting to get onto some of the bigger festival stages and stuff. So yeah, These Wicked Rivers. Nice one. And if you have anything you want to sort of promote to the world, then feel free to. Nothing too much to promote at the moment. There's just a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that I'm not going to talk about too much yet, because I'm still waiting for things to get finalised. But there's a lot of fingers in pies, and it's going to be very, very exciting. A lot of stuff that I've got coming up, but you'll be sure to know about it when the time is right. Awesome. Well, hopefully the time will be right soon. Me too. Cool. Well, thank you very much for chatting. I really enjoyed it. No worries. I'll speak to you soon. Take care.